Okay.
So, hello everyone. My name is Yutis, and we are representatives of Group 8. We would like to explain of quasi-experimental design. But before that, I would like to introduce my friends. The first one is Raisa Khalilan, second one is Azra Alivia, and the third one is Reza Azra. So here's the table of contents. As you can see, there is consists of 4 types. The first one is definition. Second one is when to use and how to use. The third one is methods, and the last one is ethical issue and limitations.
Okay, so I'm going to explain about the definition of this design method. So firstly, this method attempts to see a causal impact of a manipulated independent variable on a naturally determined dependent variable. And the quasi-experimental design does not apply random selection of participants and or random assignments of participants because these have been usually predetermined before the experiment. And this method is usually used when random assignments of participants is impossible.
So when to use of quasi-experimental design. Next slide. So the first one is ethical. Sometimes it would be unethical to provide or withhold treatment on a random basis. So true experiment is not feasible. But in this case, a quasi-experiment can follow and allow you to study the same causal relationship without the other things. And the second one is practical. As we know, through experimental design may be invisible to implement or simply too expensive. So particularly for researchers without access to large funding streams. In either case, a quasi-experimental design allows you to study the question by taking advantage of data that has previously been paid for or collected by others. Next slide.
Okay, and the next one is methods. And there are 3 types of quasi-experimental methods. Next slide, please. Okay, the first one is propensity score matching. And according to Rosenbaum and Rubin, it is a method of conditional probability of a particular treatment that can minimize bias by adjusting the propensity score based on the same covariates between the treatment and control groups. Or for short, it is a method that is carried out by balancing groups of research subject with the matching method. And the example is estimating a program or effort that has an effect on something include some estimating the effects of a training program on job performance or the effects of a government program targeted at helping particular schools. Next slide, please. And the second method is regression discontinuity design, and it is a quasi-experimental evaluation approach that uses a treatment assignment process based on a continuous eligibility index, which is a variable with a continuous distribution to measure the impact of an intervention. And this method can be implemented for school enrollment, selection, and test scores. Next slide, please. Okay, and the last one is the DID method or difference in difference. And it is a quasi-experimental strategy that compares the changes in outcomes over time between a treatment group and comparison group. And the influence of a project, program, or government policy is typically measured using this method. And the size of the net impact of the changes that occur will be determined by the computation with the different indifference. And by calculating the net revenue per year from the net effect capitalized at a specific discount rate, this method can be used to evaluate the benefit value of government-owned public buildings. And for example, difference in differences method can be used to measure the effect of the changes in minimum wage or a new workplace non-discrimination policy.
Okay, so the last one is the issues and limitations in quasi-experimental design. Next slide. Okay, the ethical issues in carrying out this design is that this design is prone to delaying and withholding an activity related to this to the design. For example, the transfer of information within to the participants are going to be less effective. So the solution is to using pre-existing and pre-selected group or study participants. Through this by the solution, it helps to avoid the ethical concerns that are associated with random assignment. Next slide, please. And for the practical limitation in this design, this design lack of good quality data that is oftenly the main problem in this design. But however, in some cases that if it is presented properly and done well, it may be accepted by some of the decision makers. Next slide, please. Okay, I guess that's all from our group. I hope it gives you some of insights, and thank you for listening to our group.
Hooray.